You can live wherever you want, just not here. That's what my daughter said to me. Her voice was calm, like she was reading a weather report, as if the storm wasn't already standing right in front of her. I was holding a box of my own photographs when she said it. Family pictures, the kind you frame when you still believe in forever. The air in that living room felt different. Too clean, too final. She'd already changed the locks. I asked, quietly, "You're putting me out." And she said, "Mom, don't make this harder. You'll be fine." The word fine hit harder than a slap. Fine means you'll cry where I don't have to see it. Fine means I already decided what your pain is worth. I looked around at the house I helped her buy. Every wall painted with my savings, every curtain sewn with my hands, and I realized she'd taken more than my home. She'd taken my dignity and called it independence. The neighbors pretended not to see as I loaded my car. A box of clothes, a few photo albums, the old tea kettle Charles and I bought on our honeymoon. 40 years of living, reduced to the sound of cardboard against concrete. When I turned the key in the ignition, my hands shook, not from fear, but from fury I didn't recognize in myself. I had raised her better than this. At least, I thought I had. They say motherhood is supposed to be unconditional, but no one tells you what to do when the child you raised stops seeing you as a person. The rain started while I was still parked in the driveway. Not the soft kind, the kind that hits the roof like a judgment. I watched the lights inside the house, my house, fade one by one. Ella's silhouette moved behind the curtain once, then disappeared. Maybe she thought I'd drive away and vanish into the night. Maybe she thought she'd never have to face what she'd done. But she forgot something. People who build their lives with love always have a second foundation hidden somewhere. And that's the thing about storms. They don't just destroy. They reveal who was waterproof all along. Stay with me, because this isn't the story of how I lost everything. It's the story of how the truth found me again. If stories like this speak to you, tap subscribe now. You'll feel less alone in the next one. When the rain eased that night, I drove until the road stopped feeling familiar. Gas station lights, motel signs, the same smell of fried food and tired people who carry their lives in plastic bags. That's where I landed. I sat in the car for a long time, just listening to the sound of my own heartbeat and the tick of cooling metal under the hood. You can't go home when home no longer wants you. So I parked under a flickering street lamp and let the memories keep me company. I used to think I'd raised my children to love each other. I had two, Ella and Michael. One burned too bright, the other burned too quietly. Ella, my firstborn, came into the world with a cry that filled the whole hospital floor. Even as a little girl, she wanted everything bigger. The bigger slice, the bigger praise, the bigger life. I told myself she just had ambition, that she'd need it in a world that didn't hand much to women who looked like us. She was smart, too. Too smart. The kind who always believed she was the one steering the storm. Michael, on the other hand, barely made a sound when he was born. He had his father's calm eyes that didn't need to speak to be understood. He used to sit on the porch with Charles, building toy boats out of scrap wood, sending them floating down the ditch after it rained. When one boat sank, Michael never cried. He'd just nod and say, "Next time, I'll build it better." That was his way. Quiet persistence. After Charles passed, the three of us became each other's weather. Some days were sun, some days were thunder, but we stayed under the same roof, holding the same memories, like they were furniture too heavy to move. The house itself wasn't much to look at. 2 stories, peeling white paint, and a porch swing that still creaked the way Charles liked it to, but it had the kind of warmth you can't buy. It smelled like cinnamon, lemon polish, and Sunday afternoons, when Ella used to braid my hair while Michael cooked his daddy's favorite stew. Back then, love didn't need words. It was in the way we passed each other spoons and smiles. But life has a way of splitting people who share the same blood. It doesn't do it all at once. It happens in whispers, in glances, in small forgettings. For Ella, the change came fast after college. She landed a good job, moved into the city, started talking about networking and long-term goals. At first, I was proud. Then the calls started coming less often. When she did call, it was always in a rush. She'd say, "Mom, I'm just so busy, but I'll visit soon." Soon stretched into seasons. By the time she finally did visit, she was wearing perfume that smelled like money and speaking in a voice that didn't belong to my baby anymore. Michael stayed nearby, working odd jobs, fixing people's fences, repairing their faith in things that could be mended. He never made much, but he never asked for anything either. If I offered help, he'd just shake his head and say, "You already gave me enough, Mom." He was the kind of son who noticed when you were quiet, not because he needed something, but because he cared. When Charles died, he left us with one thing that mattered more than money: his word. He said, "Whatever happens to me, make sure the house stays in the family. It's our roots." I promised him I would. Back then, Ella agreed, even cried when she said it. But tears are easy when you don't yet know the price of promises. The first real crack came when we sat down to read Charles's will. He had divided everything equally between the three of us: the savings, the small life insurance, even his old fishing boat. Ella frowned when she saw the numbers. "That's all?" she asked. I said, "Your father never believed in keeping riches. He believed in keeping peace." She smiled, but it wasn't kindness. It was calculation. And I felt, for the first time, a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Still, I kept telling myself, family always finds its way back. When her car pulled out of the driveway that night, I stood by the window until her taillights disappeared. Michael put his hand on my shoulder and said softly, "Don't worry, Mom. She's got to learn her way." I nodded, pretending to believe him. Years passed. Birthdays came and went, sometimes with phone calls, sometimes without. Michael kept the house running. He mowed the lawn, fixed leaks, and saved what little he could. When he laughed, I heard Charles again. It was the kind of sound that made the house feel alive. Then, one Christmas, Ella showed up without warning. New clothes, new car, new confidence. She walked in carrying more opinions than gifts. "Mom," she said, "you can't live like this anymore. The house is old, the neighborhood's dying. You should sell and move closer to me." Michael looked at her from the corner of the room, silent as always. He didn't argue, just stirred his coffee, slow and patient. I smiled politely and said, "I'm happy here, sweetheart." She smiled back, but I saw it. That same hunger Charles once warned me about. "Grace," he'd said years ago, "some storms don't come from the sky. They come from our own blood." And now, sitting in that car outside a stranger's motel, I realized I was living inside that storm. The kind that doesn't just blow your roof off, it blows away what you thought family meant. But here's the thing about love. It doesn't die easily. Even now, I couldn't bring myself to hate her. I just hated the way she made me doubt everything good I'd ever taught her. The motel light flickered above me as I whispered, "Where did I go wrong, Lord?" The silence didn't answer, but my heart did. It whispered a name, Michael. because somehow I knew he was out there, still keeping some kind of promise I couldn't yet see. Something Charles once told him, something that might still bring light into all this darkness. I started the car again, my eyes blurry from tears I didn't remember crying. The world outside was still wet and cold, but for the first time that night, I didn't feel completely alone. There was a time when mornings in that house smelled like hope. The coffee pot would whistle before the sun was up, and Charles would hum that same song he learned from his daddy, soft and off-key, but steady. Sometimes he'd twirl me across the kitchen floor just to make the kids laugh. The floorboards still creak from those dances. I never fixed them. Some things are meant to remember the joy that built them. We didn't have much, but we had enough. Charles always said, "Grace, the measure of a home ain't its size. It's how many hearts fit inside it." I used to think that sounded corny. Now I think it's gospel. After he passed, the house carried me like a boat, a little unsteady, but still afloat. Michael stayed close, helping me fix what time kept breaking. Ella drifted farther, her calls shorter, her tone clipped. When she finally came back after years of being busy, she wore success like armor, perfume too strong, smile too perfect. She looked around the living room like she was touring a museum. "Mom, you kept it all the same," she said. "Some things don't need changing," I answered. She sat, crossed her legs, and sighed, like the world weighed less when she exhaled. "You know, Michael told me you've been struggling with the roof repairs. I could help you out, but there's a better way to handle this kind of stuff now." I smiled, tired but polite. "Baby, we'll manage. This roof's seen worse storms." "I'm not talking about hammers and nails, Mom. I'm talking about money. You can't keep everything in your savings. That's not how people build wealth anymore." There it was, the tone. Not love, not concern. Authority dressed in affection. She slid a folder across the table. "I've been working with a financial consultant. They could help you refinance the property. It'll lower your taxes, free up some funds. All legit, all safe." I looked at the papers. Lines of fine print, numbers, her name beside mine. "Refinance?" I asked slowly. "That means a loan, right?" She smiled that too bright smile. "Technically, yes, but it's small. You'd still keep ownership, Mom. It's just paperwork. Trust me. I do this all the time for my clients." The word trust hit me right in the chest, because that's what motherhood runs on. Trust so deep you forget to read the fine print. "Baby, I don't want no loan," I said gently. "Your daddy hated debt. Daddy's gone, Mom. You've got to think smart now. This is how people build a future." Michael walked in halfway through, still in his work boots, wiping sweat from his brow. He looked from her to me, then down at the papers. "What's all this?" Ella laughed lightly. "Business, little brother. Don't worry, I'm taking care of Mom." Michael didn't smile. He leaned on the doorframe, quiet for a long time, then said in that slow way of his, "Mom, don't sign anything you don't read." Ella rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. I'd never do anything to hurt her. You think I'd scam my own mother?" He didn't answer, but the way he looked at her, and the way she refused to meet his eyes, said enough to make the room colder. I closed the folder, my fingers trembling slightly. "Let me think about it," I said. She smiled again, quick and shiny. "Of course, Mom. But don't wait too long. Interest rates change fast." That night, I couldn't sleep. I made tea and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the papers. The numbers blurred. The words swam. I kept hearing Charles's voice in my head. "Grace, don't let anyone talk you into giving up what you've already earned." But then Ella's voice echoed over his, smooth and logical. "It's just business, Mom. Everyone does it. And like every parent who wants to believe the best in their child, I let her voice win. The next morning, she came by early, cheerful and rushed. "Morning, sunshine. Got a notary waiting in the car. It's just 2 signatures." "Why so quick?" I asked. "Because I'm trying to help before things get worse. You trust me, don't you?" Trust me. 2 words that should come with a warning label. Michael was out of town for work. The house felt too big, too empty. I didn't want to argue, so I signed. My hand shook as the pen touched the paper. It didn't feel like signing. It felt like surrendering. I didn't even ask for a copy. Ella kissed my cheek afterward. "You won't regret this, Mom. It's going to make life so much easier." She left with a folder tucked under her arm, like a trophy. I watched her car disappear down the road, taillights blinking like a heartbeat fading into distance. A week passed. Nothing seemed different. Bills still came. The coffee pot still whistled. But sometimes, when I walked through the living room, I'd glance at the framed deed hanging by the stairs and wonder, why had she been so eager? Then one afternoon, I caught her on the phone in the yard. Her voice low, hurried. "Yeah, the documents are done. No, she doesn't know. Just process it." I froze by the window. For a moment, I thought I'd heard wrong. But the way she turned, the way she saw me and smiled too quickly, told me I hadn't. "Hey, Mom," she said, waving, her voice sugar-sweet. "Just talking to a client." I waved back, pretending to believe her, but something inside me shifted. It was small, just a hairline crack in trust, but deep enough for doubt to seep in. That night, I called Michael. "You still working late?" "Yeah. Why?" "Just checking," I said softly. "Your sister's helping me with the house papers." Silence. Then, "Helping or handling?" I laughed uneasily. "You always think the worst." "I think what's fair," he said. "Be careful, Mom." When I hung up, the house felt colder than usual. The clock ticked loud enough to sound like a warning. Outside, the ocean wind rattled the window frame. I whispered to the empty room, "Charles, I hope I did right." The rain started, steady and heavy, like a curtain closing on something I didn't yet know I'd lost. Grace, unknowingly, has just signed away her home. The audience senses it, but she doesn't yet. The betrayal isn't loud. It's quiet, believable, and cuts deeper for it. The last frame of this part lingers on Grace, sitting by the window, holding the teacup. Rain reflected in her eyes. Soft piano fades. Then, darkness, trust. That's how love walks right out the front door, without ever slamming it. 3 weeks passed before I realized something had changed. The mailbox filled with letters I didn't recognize. Loan adjustments, property tax reassessment. I stacked them on the counter, thinking they were mistakes. But mistakes don't come with your name spelled correctly. One afternoon, a man in a polo shirt came to the door. "Mrs. Turner." "Yes?" "Here to inspect the property before transition." "Transition?" I asked. He looked down at his clipboard, avoiding my eyes. "The title transfer." "Didn't your daughter tell you?" The world tilted. "What title transfer?" He frowned, pity creeping into his tone. "The deed. Ownership was refinanced to Ella Turner's trust. I just do the assessments." His words didn't sound real, just air rearranged into something cruel. I must have stood there too long, because he shifted uncomfortably and said, "Mom, if this is a misunderstanding, you should talk to your bank right away." When he left, I grabbed the folder Ella had given me, pages and signatures, my name next to hers. So clean, so official, right there in black ink. Title transfer, primary holder, Ella Turner. I felt my knees give way, but the chair caught me before the floor did. It wasn't just paper anymore. It was proof that my love had been weaponized. I went to the bank the next morning. The teller looked at me like she was delivering bad news too many times a day. I'm sorry, Mom. You're not the primary on this account anymore. You'll have to speak with your co-owner. She's my daughter, I whispered. She wouldn't— Mom? She interrupted gently. She's the only one authorized now. I walked out without my umbrella. The rain came down heavy, plastering my hair to my face, blurring the street, the cars, the world. When I got home, Ella was waiting on the porch, leaning against the post, like she owned the view. Maybe she did. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, holding up the papers. Tell you what, Mom, that you took the house. She sighed, rolling her eyes as if I were an overdramatic child. I didn't take it. I transferred it. It's safer this way. You don't understand how taxes work. Don't talk to me like I'm a stranger, Ella. This house was falling apart, Mom. You should be thanking me. Now it's in a trust. If something happens to you, it's protected. Protected from who? She hesitated, then smiled. Cold, small. From yourself. The way she said it broke something sacred. You think I'm stupid. I think you're tired. You've been through a lot. You shouldn't have to worry about these things. I wasn't tired until you made me tired. Her expression hardened. You know what, Mom? Maybe this isn't about me helping. Maybe it's about you not being able to let go. You and Michael always thought you were better than me. Maybe now you'll finally understand how it feels to depend on someone else. My mouth went dry. Is that what this is? Punishment? She didn't answer. Instead, she picked up her purse, smoothed her jacket, and said, You're overreacting. I'm having some renovations done. The contractors will start next week. You'll stay somewhere else for a while. I'll pay for everything. Stay where? A rental I found nearby. It's cute, cozy. You'll love it. I wanted to scream, but exhaustion came out instead. You're kicking me out of my own home. Temporarily. Don't make this ugly, Mom. Ugly. That's what people say when they've already decided to do something cruel and don't want to look at it. The next day, she drove me there herself. A small house on the outskirts of town. 2 rooms, cracked steps, a faint smell of mildew. It's just for a few weeks, she said, carrying boxes in with rehearsed cheer. Until everything's fixed up. I stood in the doorway, looking at the faded wallpaper, the flickering light. It felt like being buried alive in kindness I didn't ask for. When she left, I sat on the edge of the bed. The springs groaned under my weight like they knew secrets. I thought about Charles, about his hands on the same steering wheel she'd driven, about how love can turn in circles until it forgets where it started. Days passed. Ella would call sometimes. Short, brisk updates. The renovations are going great, Mom. I'll send pictures soon. She never did. I tried to visit the old house once. The gate was locked. A private property sign hung on the fence. Even the roses Michael had planted were gone, replaced by gravel. I called her again that night. Voicemail. Texted her. When can I come home? No reply. A week later, the landlord came by with an envelope. Rent's due, he said. Rent? My daughter's paying. She paid the first month. That's it. He walked away, and for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't know where my own daughter lived anymore. I drove to the bank the next morning, praying maybe Michael had sent something. The teller typed my name, frowned, and said, I'm sorry, Mrs. Turner. The joint savings account was closed last week. Full withdrawal, authorized by co-owner Ella Turner. I couldn't breathe. Not because of the money, but because of the finality in her name. It was like seeing your child's name carved into your own tombstone. Are you sure? I whispered. Yes, Mom. It says here the funds were transferred to a private account. I stumbled out of the bank, clutching the railing to steady myself. The world had tilted again, and this time, it didn't correct itself. I drove back to that little house, sat in the car for what felt like hours. Rain fell again. Always rain in this story. When I finally stepped inside, the lights flickered once and died. The power had been cut. Unpaid bills on the counter. I laughed, a low, strange sound that didn't belong to me. I'd spent my life teaching my children that honesty was worth more than gold. Turns out, gold was easier to keep. I tried calling her again, straight to voicemail. Then I called Michael. It rang once, then twice, and he answered. "Mom?" I broke down. No pretense, no pride. "She took everything, Michael. The house, the money. She's gone." He was silent for a long time. Then, "Where are you?" "At the rental." "Stay there. Don't move. I'll be there soon." "Michael, you don't have to." "No, Mom, I do." When the call ended, I sat in that dark room, tears drying on my face. I thought of Ella as a baby, holding my finger like it was her whole world. And I wondered, when did she stop needing me and start resenting me? The wind howled outside, shaking the old windows. It sounded like the ocean trying to break in. Hours later, headlights swept across the curtains. I opened the door. Michael stood there, soaked, tired, eyes burning with something quiet but dangerous. He stepped inside, looked around, then at me. "She did this?" I nodded. "She used your signature, didn't she?" "Yes." "All right," he said. "Then we start fixing it." He didn't hug me. Not yet. He just went to the counter, sorted through the bills, stacked them neatly, and said, "I'll handle these. You rest." For the first time in months, I felt the floor stop shaking beneath me. Not because I was safe, but because someone was standing on it with me again. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee. Michael was at the stove, humming one of his daddy's old songs. It broke me all over again. But this time, in a way that felt like healing. He sat across from me, serious. "Mom, I need you to tell me everything she made you sign. Every date, every call." I handed him the folder. He studied it for a while, then leaned back. "You remember when Dad used to say, 'Michael will know what to do when the time comes'?" I nodded. "I think this is that time." He didn't explain. He just smiled, calm, steady, quiet like his father. Before he left that afternoon, he squeezed my shoulder and said, "Don't lose hope. I've been saving something for a long time." And for the first time since Ella said, "You can live wherever you want, just not here," I believed maybe the story wasn't over yet. The screen fades to black. Soft piano. A single voiceover line from Grace. When love turns its back, sometimes the only hand left to hold is faith. The night after Michael left, the rain came back. It wasn't angry rain this time, just tired, like the sky had cried enough for both of us. I sat in my old car outside the small house, headlights off, listening to the slow tick of the engine cooling. The dashboard clock blinked, 11:47 p.m. I'd been sitting there for almost an hour, too heavy to move, too restless to sleep. Beside me was an old wooden box, one I hadn't opened since Charles's funeral. Inside were letters, photos, and a copy of his will. The ink faded at the corners where tears had touched it once before. I ran my fingers over his handwriting. He always pressed too hard on the pen, like every word had to prove it meant something. The letter started the same way it always did. "Grace, if you're reading this, it means time has come to collect what love left behind." I smiled through my tears. "You always talk too fancy, Charles." He'd written instructions, some practical, some poetic. The practical ones: keep the house, keep the faith, keep the kids close. The poetic ones: when the storm comes, don't curse it. Let it show you what was never meant to wash away. I whispered, "The storm's been here a while, baby. You can call it off now." But then my eyes caught a sentence I'd forgotten, one I hadn't paid much attention to years ago. If ever you find yourself without a home, remember, Michael will know what to do when the time comes. I read it again and again. The words glowed like they'd been waiting all these years to be seen. Michael will know what to do. He'd said the same thing once in person, laughing while we packed away his old fishing gear. Back then, I thought it was just another father's pride in his son. Now, it felt like a map drawn for a future I didn't yet understand. I folded the letter carefully and pressed it against my chest. Outside, thunder rolled far away, too distant to scare me anymore. For the first time in months, I turned on the radio. The old country station still worked. A woman's voice sang about forgiveness and fire, about walking through both and coming out clean. I didn't know the song, but I understood every word. I closed my eyes and pictured Michael as a boy. That small smile when he fixed things no one thought could be fixed. He was always patient, deliberate, never rushed. Even when Ella teased him for being too slow, he'd just grin and say, "Fast breaks things." Maybe Charles had seen something in him I hadn't. A quiet plan, waiting for its moment. I thought about Ella too. Her first day of school, holding my hand so tight it hurt. The time she cried because her science project broke, and Michael stayed up all night, helping her rebuild it. Somewhere between those days and this one, something went wrong. Maybe I gave her too much freedom. Maybe love spoiled instead of saved her. But the truth is, no matter how far a child falls, a mother's heart still runs after them, even when her legs don't. I leaned my head against the window, watching the raindrops slide down like memories trying to escape. If I could just hold them in place, maybe I wouldn't lose another thing tonight. When the rain slowed, I started the engine. The sound startled me, like life itself reminding me I was still here. I drove toward the ocean. It was something Charles used to do when he needed to think. "Salt air clears the lies out," he'd say. The highway was nearly empty. Streetlights flickered on and off, painting my windshield gold, then gray. When I reached the shoreline, I parked, facing the waves. The tide was low, revealing the dark stretch of sand we used to walk on, hand in hand. I could almost see him there, standing barefoot, rolling his pant legs up, grinning back at me like he'd found a secret. "Michael will know what to do," I whispered again. What did that mean? Did Charles leave something behind I didn't know about? Something Michael had been waiting for? I pulled out my phone, scrolled through our last messages. Small talk, check-ins, nothing out of the ordinary. But the last one, "Mom, I've been saving something for a long time." That line echoed with the same rhythm as Charles's note. Saving something, knowing what to do when the time comes. A chill ran down my spine. Not fear, but realization. The first light of dawn began to break through the clouds. The sea turned silver, the color of hope, learning how to breathe again. I reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a small silver locket, the one Charles had given me when we bought the house. Inside was a tiny folded picture, him holding both kids on the porch steps, sun in their faces, trust in their eyes. I touched the photo and whispered, "Maybe the storm didn't take everything. Maybe it's just rearranging what was already meant to change." The radio crackled again. The same song came back on. The chorus said, "The tide always returns, bringing back what the heart deserves." I smiled, shaking my head. Charles always said God talks in riddles and radios. Maybe he was right. I sat there until the horizon turned from steel to gold, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel afraid of what came next. Because somewhere out there, my son was moving, slow, steady, certain, just like his father once did. And maybe, just maybe, the time Charles wrote about had finally come. Sometimes the loudest miracles arrive in silence. When everything's been taken from you, faith is the only thing no one can steal. If you believe miracles still find their way home, tap like. It helps this story reach someone who needs hope tonight. And if you're not sure yet, but you still want to see how this ends, just type 1 in the comments and stay with me. The morning after that call, the rain had finally stopped. For the first time in months, sunlight filtered through the curtains, hesitant, like it was asking permission to come back. Michael was already up, coffee steaming beside him, papers spread across the table. His eyes were clear, steady. "Mom," he said, "I need you to trust me for a little while." "Of course," I replied. "But what are you doing?" He smiled, small and knowing, something that's been a long time coming. He didn't explain. And for once, I didn't ask. Some faith doesn't need details. It just needs timing. The next few days moved like whispers. Michael left early, came back late. Phone calls, folders, quiet meetings with people I didn't know. He'd come home smelling like rain and cold paper, tired but calm. Sometimes I'd ask, "Everything okay?" And he'd answer the same way every time. "Better than okay." One night, I caught him on the porch, staring out toward the horizon. The wind tugged at his jacket. "You look like your daddy," I said softly. He smiled without turning. "He left me more than I thought." "What do you mean?" "You'll see soon enough, Mom. Just don't lose sleep tonight." But I did, because mothers don't stop worrying. Not even when hope finally starts knocking again. A week later, he told me to get dressed. "We've got somewhere to be." "Where?" "You'll find out on the way." He said it so gently that I didn't argue. We drove for miles, past the edge of town, the road lined with pine and silence. The air smelled of wet earth and memory. Halfway there, I noticed he kept checking his watch. "Are we late?" "Right on time." We turned onto a familiar street, one that led straight to my old neighborhood. My chest tightened. The closer we got, the louder the sea sounded. When we reached the gate of my old home, I froze. There it was, the house, our house. My breath caught. "Michael, why are we here?" "To finish what she started," he said. "Only properly this time." He parked, but didn't get out yet. The porch looked smaller now, lonelier, like it missed being loved. I wanted to run to it, to touch it, to ask it if it remembered me. "Michael," I whispered, "I can't go in there." "You don't have to," he said. "Not yet." He handed me an envelope. "Mr. Coleman's inside. He'll explain everything." I opened it. The first page had my name, bold, legal, clear. But my hands were shaking too much to read the rest. "What is this?" "Proof," he said. Then he got out of the car, walked toward the door, and knocked twice. From the window, I watched as the door opened. Ella stood there, startled, confused, but still proud. She was dressed sharp, the way guilt often disguises itself. Michael spoke calmly. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see her body stiffen. Then another man appeared, Mr. Coleman. He handed her some papers, pointed at something, spoke with that measured tone only lawyers have. Ella's expression changed. Disbelief first, then anger, then a silence that looked heavier than any scream. She turned her face toward the car. Our eyes met through the window. Her mouth moved, forming the same word she used when she was 6 and broke a vase, Mom. But this time, I didn't rush to fix what she'd broken. Michael gestured for me to step out. My knees felt weak, but I opened the car door anyway. Each step toward that porch felt like walking back through years of loss. The wind carried the smell of salt and wood polish home. "Mom," Ella said softly, eyes red, "I didn't know it would come to this." "You knew enough to sign my name," I replied. My voice didn't shake. "I just wanted control. I thought I could manage it better than you." "That's what you call love now? Management?" She looked down, shoulders collapsing. "I was drowning, Mom. Debts, pressure, everything. I thought if I used the house for leverage, I could fix it all. And when it didn't fix, you left me out to drown instead." Her silence was the truest thing she'd ever said. Michael handed her a folder. "That's the transfer. The property's back in Mom's name." Ella blinked. "What? How?" "Doesn't matter how," he said quietly. "Just that it's right again." Mr. Coleman cleared his throat. Professional, but kind. "The court reviewed the documents. Fraudulent authorization. But it's been reversed. Titles restored." I stared at the words. The air felt lighter. The porch groaned under our feet. Old wood, new truth. Ella's face broke. "I lost everything." Michael's reply was calm. "No, you gave it away. There's a difference." She turned to me again. "Mom, I'm sorry." I wanted to scream, cry, do something dramatic enough to match the months she stole from me. But none of that came, only stillness. And in that stillness, I heard my husband's voice again. "When the storm ends, don't waste time counting what broke. Just start planting again." So I looked at her and said, "Ella, I'll forgive you when you start forgiving yourself. Until then, go fix what's left of your heart." She nodded, crying now. Real tears this time. Then she left. No slamming doors, no thunder. Just the quiet sound of shoes on gravel, fading like regret. After she was gone, I turned to Michael. "Tell me," I said, "how did you do this? The lawyer? The payments? It takes months, years." He smiled, that same crooked smile his daddy had. "Remember when Dad used to say he was planting for tomorrow? Turns out he meant it literally. He'd put some things aside. Stocks, land. I found the papers in his old lockbox." I stared at him, realizing slowly. "That's what you've been working on all this time?" "Yep." He shrugged, simple as sunlight. "I sold one parcel, paid the liens, cleared the debts, then made an offer she couldn't refuse. The house is paid in full. No mortgage, no strings." I felt my breath catch, not from surprise, but from awe. Not because of the money, but because of what it meant. He didn't just save the house. He redeemed the family name. "How much did it take?" I asked quietly. He chuckled. "Enough to make things right. Not enough to make me proud." We stepped back inside. The light through the window hit the photo wall. Our family, frozen in simpler times. Charles, young and grinning. Me, with my hair still black and wild. Ella and Michael sitting on the porch swing, sharing a popsicle. I ran my hand along the frame. "It's like he's still here," I whispered. "He never left," Michael said. "He just waited until we could hear him again." We moved room by room, touching memories, reclaiming space, not with noise, but with presence. By the time we reached the kitchen, the kettle began to whistle. Faint at first, then louder, like an old friend remembering its job. We laughed. I hadn't heard that sound in months. "Coffee?" he asked. I nodded. "Make it strong. It's been a long season." We sat on the porch as the sun began to set, mugs warm in our hands. The sea stretched out ahead, quiet and golden. The house behind us breathed again. "You did good, son," I said. "No, Mom, you did. You never gave up." I looked at him. My quiet boy, now a man who'd fought darkness without ever raising his voice. "Your daddy would have been proud," I said. "Maybe he still is." We sat there in silence for a while, letting the sound of the waves fill the spaces words couldn't. If you've ever seen truth walk back into the room without shouting, tap like for this moment, And if you've ever loved someone who fought for you quietly, type "thank you" in the comments below. Later that night, Michael handed me an envelope. "Found this in Dad's papers. He wrote it to you. Said to give it when everything comes full circle." Inside was a short letter in Charles's handwriting. It read, "Grace, if you ever feel like you've lost everything, remember, I left you proof that love multiplies when it's silent. You'll see it in our boy. He'll build what I could only dream." Tears blurred the ink. I folded it gently, pressed it against my heart. "You were right, Charles," I whispered. He did. The moon was high when I finally turned off the lights. The house was quiet again, but it was a different quiet now. Not empty, but full of everything that had been broken, forgiven, rebuilt. I walked to the door, looked out at the ocean, and whispered, "Thank you for finding your way home." The wind answered softly, carrying the smell of rain and roses, Charles' favorite kind. Fade out. The truth didn't roar. It signed quietly. It walked back home, wearing my son's smile. The house was ours again, but peace wasn't. Because sometimes justice fixes what's outside, and forgiveness has to rebuild what's inside. And that's when he appeared, the man who somehow always shows up right after the storm. Orion Sage. The morning after everything was settled, the house felt still. Not empty, just waiting. Like it knew there was one last thing left to be said before it could rest. The rain had cleared overnight, and the air smelled clean, like salt and pine and second chances. I sat on the porch with a blanket around my shoulders, the same mug of coffee growing cold in my hands. That's when I saw him, a man walking slowly up the path, hands in his pockets, the kind of calm that doesn't need to announce itself. Tall, gray hair brushed back, eyes steady, not sharp, but deep. He looked like he carried more peace than most people could handle. When he reached the steps, he nodded. "You must be Grace Turner." I hesitated. "Do I know you?" "Not yet," he said, smiling faintly. "But you will." He didn't ask to come in. He just looked at the ocean and said, "Mind if I sit a while? The breeze here smells honest." Something in his tone, soft, unhurried, made it impossible to say no. I gestured to the chair beside me. He sat, leaned back, and said nothing for a long time. Only the waves spoke. After a while, he said, "You've been through a storm." I nodded, eyes still on the sea. "It's over now." He shook his head gently. "No storm ever ends. It just moves inland." I turned to him, a little startled. "You talk like someone who's seen a few. Enough to know that what breaks a person isn't the thunder. It's the silence that follows it." I exhaled slowly. "Then I guess I'm still standing in that silence." He smiled. "That's a good place to be. That's where you hear the truth that was too quiet before." I looked down at my hands. They still trembled sometimes, as if the memories hadn't yet accepted peace. "My daughter betrayed me," I said finally. "And my son, he saved me. But it doesn't feel finished. It doesn't feel fair." He nodded. "Because justice fixes the story, but forgiveness heals the storyteller." That line hit like gentle lightning. Not burning, just bright. I asked quietly, "How do you forgive someone who doesn't even ask for it?" "You don't do it for them," he said. "You do it so they no longer get to live inside your pain." The breeze carried his words out to sea, but they lingered in me. "Forgiveness," he continued, "isn't saying, 'You were right.' It's saying, 'You no longer control what I remember.'" I felt something inside loosen. Not gone yet, but untying. He reached down, picked up 2 small pebbles from the porch railing, and held them out in his palm. "Let me show you something," he said. "Imagine this first stone is the hurt your daughter gave you. Heavy, sharp, real. You carry it because it reminds you to never trust her again. He moved it to his left hand. Now, this second one, it's the anger you keep so she doesn't get away with it. You grip it tighter because it feels like justice. He closed both fists, his knuckles pale. But here's what most people don't see. You can't hold anything new when your hands are full. Then he opened his palms and let the stones fall. They hit the wooden floor with a sound softer than rain. Forgiveness, he said, isn't about forgetting. It's about freeing your hands to build again. I stared at the stones for a long moment. The space where they'd been felt lighter. I thought letting go meant losing, I whispered. I thought if I forgave her, I'd be saying what she did was okay. That's what fear says, he replied. But truth says forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It edits your part in it. He leaned forward. You already won, Grace. Your son brought you justice. Your husband left you wisdom. Now your heart wants peace. But peace doesn't visit a locked house. I blinked, tears stinging. I don't even know where to start. You already did, he said. You opened the door this morning. The ocean wind picked up, brushing through the trees, rattling the chimes by the porch. He looked toward the horizon. You know why storms come? He asked. To show us which roots were strong enough to stay. I nodded slowly. I lost a lot. You didn't lose it, he said. You learned what was never yours to keep. There was no sting in his voice, no sermon, just truth, plain as daylight. When people betray us, they don't take our worth, he continued. They just reveal where we stopped seeing it. That one cracked something open in me. All those nights, crying in the dark, replaying her voice, her words, her laugh, while she lied. I'd been measuring my value by her choices, and suddenly, I didn't want to anymore. He pointed toward the tide rolling in. Watch the ocean, he said. It never begs the waves to return. It just waits, because what belongs always finds its way home, in its own time. I smiled faintly. My husband used to say the same thing. Then he was a wise man. For a while, we just watched the water. The waves came and went, steady, forgiving. You see, he said softly, the ocean forgives every day. Not because it forgets the storms, but because it knows there will always be another dawn. I let that settle in. The salt air filled my lungs, and for the first time, it didn't burn. He stood then, brushing off his coat. You don't owe your daughter an apology or an explanation, but you can wish her well, silently, sincerely. That's how peace starts walking back toward you. I closed my eyes, whispered under my breath, may she find her way. May she remember who she was before greed made her forget. When I opened my eyes again, he was smiling. There it is, he said, the sound of a soul unlocking. How did you know to come here? I asked. He chuckled. Let's just say your husband left more than letters behind. I frowned. You knew Charles? Once, he said. Long ago. He helped me when I'd lost everything. Told me if he ever left before his work was done, I'd know who to look for. Me? You, he said simply. And your children. He started to walk away, down toward the edge of the sand. Orion Sage, I called after him. Will I ever see her again? My daughter? He turned back, the wind catching his hair. When you've forgiven her fully, not because she deserves it, but because you do, she'll find her way home. That's how truth works. It always circles back. He paused, then added, but when she does, you'll be different. You won't be waiting for an apology. You'll be ready to love without remembering the bruise. He started walking again, his steps leaving clean prints in the wet sand. Thank you, I said softly. He looked over his shoulder, eyes kind. Don't thank me. Thank the part of you that never stopped believing storms could clear. Then he was gone, the waves swallowing the sound of his footsteps. I sat there for a long time, the sun climbing higher. Somewhere inside, the old ache softened, not vanished, but forgiven. The sea glimmered gold, endless, impatient. I whispered into the wind, "Charles, it's done. She'll come back when she's ready." The breeze shifted, almost like an answer. People think forgiveness is something you give away, but it's really what you give back to yourself. Because when you stop waiting for someone to fix what they broke, you finally start building again. She stands, looks at the ocean one last time, and walks back toward the house. The camera lingers on the horizon, where the tide meets the sun. If this story made you breathe a little easier, tap subscribe for more stories guided by Orion Sage. Because sometimes the story you need is the one that helps you forgive yourself.